So today's conversation, I'm going to keep this short. For some of you that join on with me live, thank you for being here live. Let me know where you're jumping in from. Say hello. Love to just connect with you guys all again. I've had a Facebook page for well over 15 years, according to my memories that keep popping up and how long I've been on this platform, and it's evolved so much over the years. So it's really fascinating to be here and be back on a live with you all. So one of the things I just wanted to quickly do was just introduce myself again. I don't know if anyone really knows the story. I don't share much on my personal Facebook page about this. But I think I'm just going to dive in and just kind of, hey, you're clear on the other side of the country from Washington. I love April joining in. Thank you for that. So for those that don't know, about 15 years ago, I dove into the world of entrepreneurship. Might have even been before that a little bit. But I always was fascinated by business, finances, money, just how the world of business really worked. So I was definitely curious about it. I had been in the Disney at the time, so a little over 15 years ago, as I was a chef at Disney. I was working in the kitchens. I was raising up in the ranks like I wanted to. I started off as an hourly employee and slowly climbed my way up into the honored role of sous chef. Did my time, was there for a little over 12 years and just had an extraordinary experience. And one of the things I always looked at back then was I looked at the people around me. And I said to myself, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to have a life of freedom. I want to be able to do things on my own time. I think many women can, and men even experience that, is that, working in the 9 to 5 job, wanting to have a family, wanting to have a life outside of that isn't always the easiest thing. So we look at, okay, how do we grow from here? How do we keep moving forward? So at my time at Disney, I really took advantage of the opportunity to learn how Disney brands. I was always curious how people would spend anywhere from four to $50 to $100,000 on a 3 day to a week long trip at Disney, and yet they would keep coming over and over again. I always thought that was an interesting dynamic to how Disney built its brand. And then being an entrepreneur or being an employee on the inside. Hey Michelle, good to see you here. I also saw a lot of how Disney built the culture of why people would want to come back to that business over and over again. And I think culture is one of the big pieces of the puzzle for any business. Is what is it you want your brand to stand for? What is it you want your business to stand for? And when Disney onboarded each employee, you actually all got the exact same experience, education, history of what made Walt Disney and Disney World and Disneyland such a predominant force in the world of media, theme parks, animation. It was just fascinating. So I really took the time to understand the environment that I was in, not only as a cook, but also in terms of just what was there for me. Now, at one point, I had an opportunity to dive into the world of being a restaurateur. And so while I was part time at Disney, yes, you could be a part time chef at Disney at one point. I'm not sure if they still do that or not. Um, I bought a restaurant. I found a business partner of mine through a game called Cash Flow. I was creating that as a weekend or a weekly event. Some of you might remember that one. I think Michelle was actually part of that group back in the day. I had a lot of really great friends that I met, and business entrepreneurs that I met out of that game playing Cash Flow. And from there, I owned a restaurant for 9 glorious months. And in that experience, I learned I didn't know what I didn't know, to be honest. In those 9 months, I grew a lot professionally, personally, in owning a business. And when we closed the doors, I remember very specifically sitting down with my business partner. We were in the car looking back at the restaurant. The lights were off, the door was closed, and saying to myself, I want to help more small businesses succeed as opposed to fail. I want to create an environment and a place where entrepreneurs can come and really learn what they don't know about their business. And this started me on this incredible journey of becoming an entrepreneur. So first thing I did is, after closing that restaurant, it was a catastrophic moment for me, for sure. I lost my house due to trying to keep the restaurant afloat, trying to make sure my employees got paid. I didn't pay myself. And I ended up closing that restaurant and losing my house a little less than 30 days later. I was on the couch of a friend's house, just kind of starting all over again. And this became like my journey of really wanting to learn what it was to be an entrepreneur. So I got online. I started looking at affiliate marketing. That was my first introduction into the world of entrepreneurship. I dabbled in network marketing. I just never really felt like it was me, to be honest. I like the idea of helping other people. I like the idea of building a community. I just didn't want to do it with somebody else's product that I had no control over, to be honest. I didn't know what was going to come in the door. I didn't know what kind of product was going to get delivered to people, and I didn't want to, be responsible for something I didn't have control over. So maybe that's my control freakness. Who knows? But from there, I fell in love with entrepreneurship. I fell in love with affiliate marketing. There were times, crazy times in the beginning where, you make ends meet, you figure things out. But I loved the affiliate marketing because I didn't have to necessarily own the product, but I got to be a user of the product. And I fell in love with the world of digital. I've been online with Facebook for, like I said, for well over 15 years. I watched the evolution of digital marketing. I had the privilege of joining an incredible company on my journey of entrepreneurship. I had a company that took a chance on a chef. I always say, like, I can't believe you hired a chef to run your community and then to be able to be your social media manager and then handing that off and transitioning to their director of client experience and really getting a chance to work with customer support, product development, building out a coaching program, having a say in how that went, working with thousands of entrepreneurs in that space. I mean, it was life changing and very exhausting to be honest. And one of the interesting things around that time period where I got to work with this extraordinary company and these amazing mentors of mine, one of the things that I recognized early on, one of the patterns that I saw, and I mentioned this in my post earlier yesterday, is I saw this ongoing pattern with women. And it was the first time I noticed it was at workshops. And when we were doing workshops, one of the things we always talked about was time management. This is one of those big things women are also looking for is how do you better control your time? How do you manage family, business, your health, all of that? And the traditional way was time blocking. We talked a lot about time blocking. We talked a lot about color coding calendars, setting time aside, doing things in a very strategic daily method of operation. That's what they called it, was a DMO, daily method of operation. And it always felt inauthentic, to be honest, for me. It never felt like it sat. And I just remember watching all the women that would come through these workshops and they would go through this training. And the first question they asked was like, well, how do I do this? And the response was, you'll figure it out. That was usually the response for a lot of what we did as women was, you'll figure it out. And we have figured it out to some extent. I still watch women today as entrepreneurs struggle to balance family time with their kids, with their spouses, with their selves. We have so many things we deal with as women. And so when I started looking at what I didn't know about being a female in business, my first inkling that I was going to be going down this path, kids don't care about your color schedule. You can schedule that crap all you want, but we are more fluid as women. And I knew that this was something that was important, and I just didn't know how to implement this. I didn't have the tools, I didn't have the research, I didn't have the skill set, and there wasn't a lot of information for how women ran businesses. There wasn't. We knew how to run a business as a guy. That's the truth. Honestly, most of us that run businesses run them on a male time clock period. We run it just how our male counterparts have taught us to run it because that's what they know works, but the reality is fundamentally and psychologically and sociology, like everything about us as women is different. We don't follow the same patterns as our male cohorts. Yeah, so even yeah, I couldn't keep up with the color blocking. It worked and then it didn't work, right? And I think that was what I started seeing for a lot of women, is that things were working and then they were no longer working. I remember sitting down with a lady that I met at a networking event, and she's like, yeah, I'm burnt out from all the business books that I'm reading. And I said, well, who's writing the business books? And I said, is it male or female? She goes, men. And I said, yeah, we're reading textbook training from our male counterparts, but it's really geared towards men in business. It's set up to follow their hormonal pattern, their cycle, their clock, and they figured it out. They've had centuries to do this. And really, for us women, the interesting part is that we've been in the business world as we know it today, and I am so proud of what we've accomplished over the last 60 years as women, because now we're in the medical professions, we're in the legal professions, we're in those high level professions, really having access to tools and research and information that we didn't have for a very long time. So kudos to us. Seriously, we've done so much as women in the world of business. It's phenomenal to watch. On the flip side of that coin, one of the things I have talked with a lot of businessmen over the years is that while women are reaching these high level positions, they're not staying in these positions for any length of time. Like they get there and then it's unsustainable how they got there. Like they ran the race, they got there, and then the sustainability of how they got there, they're unable to manage. And this really started pointing out something to me that we were missing in our education for female businesses. And I never thought this was going to become the journey that I went on. But from that workshop at that company and just learning how to work with entrepreneurs, from there, I completed my time with that company, had a great, amazing experience, and I'm so grateful that they took a chance on me as a chef back then. And I learned so much around how to run a company, how to look at employees, how to bring on people. Hey, Kathy, good to see you here. And it just started the journey for me. I went on to build out Pinterest coaching programs. I built courses on teaching women how to use Pinterest as an incredible marketing tool, which I still believe today. But I didn't really like the way I was building that coaching program. And then I was like, okay, well, I want to teach business coaching. And so I went on to build out a high level, high ticket coaching program to teach women and men how to build businesses. And while the men seemed to be grasping the concepts, women were really struggling to balance family, health, life, pricing, all of it. And they were still up against this bubble. I'm like, what the heck is going on? And I think for me, what really was one of the hardest things about closing the doors to that coaching program that I started was I was getting like exhausted. I don't know how else to put this. I remember talking with my mentors at the time and still my business mentors, incredible gentlemen that have just been critical to why I'm having this conversation with women today. Is I remember being on a call and we were talking about like the next level of the business, right? How do you level up? And I just remember I just remember being exhausted. That was the word I used. I remember being just so thoroughly exhausted, like mentally, physically. I got what I could do to level up. I knew the information analytically, mentally. I knew my next steps. I knew exactly what I had to do. But the idea of doing it, especially on my own as a solo entrepreneur, was exhausting. I was like, I don't want to maintain this. I don't want to even want to bring on a team and function at that high level where there just never seems to be an off switch. And I was like, okay, I've definitely hit burnout yet again. I burned out at Disney as a chef. I just kept pushing myself to prove of what I could do. I just remember burning out with the company that I was with. I was like, it just feels like, well, we had a team and everybody was doing stuff. The level of which I could sustain was no longer sustainable. And so it was interesting what I didn't know about being a female. And I never thought I'd have this conversation with you today. I didn't realize what it meant to be a woman in business. And what I mean by that is as I started looking around, one of the things, and I shared this on our podcast that's coming out next week, I said, there was this saying that I heard really early on, and it said, find somebody that has what you want, do what they do, and you'll get what they got, right? And I was like, oh, this is fantastic. And when I first started out 15 years ago, all my mentors were men. There were very few women that were doing the type of training and business that was out there that I saw these men doing. So I jumped on and I said, okay, these are the mentors I want to have. This is what I want to do. I started doing what they were doing, and I started following all their systems and their programs and their trainings. And I was like, I got this. And, I absolutely reached that financial level of success. and I was unable to sustain it. And I was like, okay, what am I missing? What's going on here? Yeah, you can't. No matter how hard you push, you can't just keep pushing this. And I kept finding myself um, being stuck. And so I went to this retreat, and it was for women only. It was like a 2 day event with a friend of mine. And I was like, okay, maybe I just need to be around women entrepreneurs and just kind of see what's going on. And I remember sitting down with one of the girls, and we were talking, and we share a lot about what we deal with as women. And I think we need more conversations, honestly, that talk about what we experience hormonally as women, which I'll be talking about later on. Um, but it was an interesting conversation because she asked me, and I was a little offended, a lot offended, and I was not offended really. I was taken back. It was a question that was asked that I never considered, and it was a blunt question, and the question was, "Have you talked to your pussy today?" And I was like, I can't believe you just said that to me. Like, what does that have to do with business? What does that have to do with anything with my health and how I'm feeling or any of that? Like, I could not believe that I was asked that question by another woman who, was that bold to say something like that to me. And, I've been through a lot of self development. I've been through a lot of different training programs. Personal development, I think, is massive for women. We have so many beliefs and trauma and things that we've dealt with as women over the centuries that we still hold on to. So much shame, blame, fear, dear Lord, you name it, us women have it in spades. um, um, yeah, and so and April makes a good point. Sometimes we just shrink down to let ourselves become smaller. And so what was interesting about that comment when I sat with it, and in terms of how I looked at self-development, I said, okay, there's something about this conversation that I actually really need to hear, and I need to sit with myself to listen to it. And what I mean by sit with ourselves, was that I had to really look at who was I and where was my most authentic self. And I hear this a lot with women, honestly. I don't feel authentic. I feel like I'm faking it. I don't feel like I know who I really am. And I hear this a lot with women, especially coming out of motherhood, women that are transitioning from their kids being little ones into teenagers, into adults. And all of a sudden you're like, what do I do with myself? I don't know who I am. And I was like, okay, I keep hearing this also. So what are we missing as women in understanding who we are? And I was like, okay, this really is a fascinating conversation I'm about to dive into. And I had no idea I was gonna fall down this path or down this rabbit hole that turned out to be one of the biggest blessings of my life. And so when I sat with that question, I realized something, and I was I was shocked. I was shocked at how much I had cut myself off from myself. I had conformed to fit so many norms of being a female business owner, what it should look like, the financial success I should reach, the numbers I should have to prove my worth that I was a successful businesswoman. And what I was really struggling with was understanding who I was. And that's when I really had that conversation where I recognized I didn't know myself from the neck down. I understood who I was from here up. I was in the analytical like nobody else's business. I could structure, plan, build, and I knew what things looked like. Um, in I For me, what I struggled with was looking down. I hear a lot of the times, and this is one of the big things we work at with women, is mirror work, is looking at ourselves and really seeing our true authentic selves, and not what we think we should look like, but actually acknowledging who we and what we really are. And so I did a look in, and I started looking for information on what it is to be a woman. And there's not a lot of information. It's, in the 60s, we entered the workforce. And statistically, they say since 1999, the decline of women entering the workforce has continued to decrease. Women aren't going after these jobs like we used to, because I think we've seen our mothers and our grandparents do what we thought was how we should build a business as a woman, and that just didn't make sense anymore. And so I started going into like, what does it mean to be a female? And the conversation was, feminine energy. And I thought, oh, this is it. This is totally how we're going to build a business. We're going to focus in on the feminine energy and what it means to be a female. And I was like, nope, that's not going to work either, because we as human beings are balancing both energies. We are both masculine and feminine all the time. And I started looking into that, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. Is this where I want to go? So, about 2 years ago, I started a company called Truth Bomb Marketing. And this company started out after my frustration of 2020 and 2021 of watching all this crazy crap pop up on the internet of everyone suddenly being an expert on all business marketing tools as they entered into the realm themselves, grabbed a couple courses, and they knew everything. And I was like, yay, we're back in here. But I was still seeing a high level of burnout from women. I was calling up women that I had seen successfully build businesses and being like, I haven't seen you on social media recently. I haven't seen you actively going, what's going on? And I mean, these were 6, 7 figure women in businesses, and they're like burnt out, couldn't sustain it. And I was like, okay, I know I'm on to something here. I just don't know what this looks like. Like, how do you take the intangible of being a woman and make it tangible, right? Um, yeah, God, Kathy, can only imagine what you've seen in your lifetime on how women's roles have changed over the past few decades, for sure. Um, and I mean, I mean, watching my parents and having this conversation with my mom. I mean, it's been really interesting to be honest. And so I've been looking for information, books, research that have really started looking at what it is to be a woman. And the crazy part is that because women started getting into the medical profession, because women have started getting into roles that were typically predominantly male, and where there's still a lot of places where we have opportunities to expand and grow. um, I went looking, and the first book I read, which was a kind of a shocking book. I've read all of it's so funny. How many of you, I'm just out of curiosity, how many of you have probably read all the business books, or a good chunk of business books out there? Like things like, I don't know, Think and Grow Rich. You've probably read How to Build Your Tribe. You've probably read time management books. You've probably read a lot of books out there on how to build a business. How many of you have read like at least a dozen or more, self-help development business books of some form or fashion in the course of your time online and building your business? I mean, I'm just curious if you got like a number, drop like 5, 6. I just just let me know how many you think you've read. I have a library, bookshelves of books that I've read over the years. And when it was interesting is as I started a lot, right? That was a strange place. When I started looking at all the names on all the books, I was like, okay, they're all written by men. Like, I'm literally reading all business. Like, where are my women? Where the flock are my women out there that are leading the way in these conversations? Why am I learning about how to build tribes and community from men when like that's a lot of what women do naturally? Like, we are connectors and builders and emotions and empathetic. There's a word in there. And I was like, so it was like, where are my females at? And then when I started finding female books around business, they were nothing more than the regurgitated male version of the books that I was reading. And I was like, okay, this isn't helping me. Like, I want to model business women that understand what it is to be a woman in business, and I don't see it. It's like they still are sacrificing, they still are giving up, and I said that doesn't feel natural, that doesn't feel authentic for what we're doing. So I was like, okay, I've got to dive into this. I really have to understand what this is. I'm going to make a call out to a friend of mine. Heidi, if you are watching this, can you come in and grab my charger? It looks like I am draining battery footage on my computer faster than I can recharge it, which I think is kicking back some audio and video feed for everybody. Yeah, and it is complicated, right? It is a complicated place that we're staying in as a female entrepreneur. So one of the things that I started looking at was, how do you build a business academy for women? That was really what happened about almost 2 years ago. It was the start of. I started it myself. I started looking at, okay, what can we do to bring the intangible of what we experience as women and make it a tangible part of our education in developing our business? Like, what would that look like? And I will tell you, it's been a fascinating journey. So it took it took a lot of help. I had to bring in a lot of different modalities of marketing, mindset. I had to bring back the creativity element that women are absolutely missing from our business training, that needed to come back in order for us to sustain our business. So, what does that look like? That's a great question. I'm actually going to be talking about that later this week also. There's a series of videos that I'm working on that I'm going live every day for the next 6 days. And it's all about being a female business owner. And it's all about designing a business as a woman. So one of the things I really wanted to look at, and I'm playing with my lighting over here, don't mind me, I'm just having some fun. There we go. What I've started to see was that women need a different approach to building their business, and one that's more holistic for how we experience the business world. So one of the things I'll just share with you some of the things I'm going to be talking about this whole week, just so you know. So tomorrow I'm going to be talking about the female business cycle. Yeah, it starts within, and it starts with our mindset. And also what I've also found, Kathy, and what I've started to discover with a lot of women, is that it also starts with understanding our hormonal cycle as women. We don't, and really have just started uncovering what it is to be a female and how our hormones play into our creative genius, into our ability to manage stress. We've been running on a time clock that we thought is the only one we have. And this is fascinating too. So the first book I ever read that kind of shocked me, it was called Pussy, the Reclamation. If you ever get a chance to read it, absolutely read it. And it redefined for me what it is to be a female, and understanding my own anatomy down below the neck, right? Was like, okay, I knew this, and yet I didn't understand it because none of the doctors talk about it. No one actually educates us in school about being a woman. We get taught everything else, and like our anatomy, our periods, our cycles are all just kind of brushed over most of the time, and or made to feel like it's an uncomfortable conversation. That's true. So the first book I read was The Pussy Reclamation. That was fascinating. I will tell you, she wrote this book a little over 20 years ago. She built out a school for women, and I thought this was just fascinating conversation, to be honest, and discussed it with other women just because I was tired of not being in the know about my own body and my own, makeup, right? Yeah, Heidi dropped the link for you all, so you want to definitely check out that book. The other book, and hopefully she has this link for this one too, is one we're reading right now. It's called, actually, I actually have that book. Hold, please. So the book that I would just mention is called Pussy. It's this one right here. Yeah, I don't want to make the boys uncomfortable in health class. And honestly, women are the most complex in terms of the body. And so it was like, yeah, I definitely want to learn more about that. The other one that it's been just freaking mind-boggling training is one called In the Flow. Alisa has been a remarkable researcher on the female anatomy, and the psychology and how our hormones work and what we've been doing to really harm ourselves as women, and not understanding our own hormonal cycle, how exercise affects us. We've been following diet plans, exercise plans, hormonal plans of men for years, and it's really, I think, what's causing our biggest burnout, because we're not maintaining our own energy and we're not knowledgeable about our own bodies. So this really led to the development of an academy for women in business. And when I talk to this for women, I actually say, we teach women how to build sustainable businesses to get to that millionaire status, which we don't necessarily are checking the numbers. But what we know as women is what that money will do for our children, what that money will do for our communities, what that money will do for, so many people in our lives. Like, we look at the impact of how money goes, not necessarily that it has to be in our bank account. But I find that when I talk with women around, wanting to be millionaires, research has been all on men. Even today, medical studies and a lot of the drugs that are coming out, still over 60% of the tests are done on men, not women. And we can get into that whole conversation at another time too, because it's easier to test on men because men hormonally cycle. This was something I found really fascinating. Like, we know this as women. So there's the circadian rhythm, which I know you're hearing a lot about, right? So that's your 24-hour clock. And so we know that men hormonally cycle in 24 hours. It's how they build businesses. It is how they live their day-to-day lives. That's how they can consistently do the same thing over and over again, because they complete every day hormonally. And so when they look at building a business, when they talk about consistency, their consistency is showing up doing the same thing over and over again, because for them, that creates some structure in their life. That has them do exactly what they want to do. When I learned the phrase infradian rhythm, which is what women actually have, so we have two clocks that we work through as women. And we work through both the infradian rhythm and the circadian rhythm. So the infradian rhythm is our 28-day clock. And I know that we talk about this. I meet a lot of women in business, a lot of women that are in their 40s and 50s that are building businesses, and they're like, well, what about me? I'm either perimenopausal or postmenopausal. Do I still have a infradian clock? And the science isn't there yet, but I feel, and I've talked with women, is that we still have the energetic of that cycle. We still cycle through the energy, whether we have the physical manifestation of a period, for how we do business. And I thought was really interesting when we started teaching women how to manage time. We stopped focusing on the day-to-day activities because that was stressing the crap out of women. And we started looking at what was the month-to-month cycle of a woman. How do we spread out time over the month to really fall into our phases of our cycle, which I'll be talking about tomorrow. I'm not going to dive fully into this, but I wanted to kind of give you like a little bit of a tidbit of this. So what we were looking at was that as women, we do have a 4-phase cycle every month. And during those phases of our cycle, our bodies, our hormones actually produce different energetics that we have access to. So whether you're in the first 7 to 10 days of your cycle, whether you are in your ovulatory phase, your luteus phase, or your menstrual phase, each one of these was a powerful place for energy. So this is how you restore your energy. This is how you learn to take rest. This is when you learn how the woman's brain functions differently, how we view time over a longer period, no pun intended, because we do have a period, right? We actually fit better and do more with our day to day when we look at the longer time span, which is why I think women typically do better when they're given projects with a time frame, because when we're not focused on the day to day, but we focus on how the days fit into the month and how we accomplish the overall task, we actually feel better about ourselves. We maintain our energy balance better, and we're taking care of how we feel, because we're not the same woman day to day. This has also been proven because we cycle through 28 days to 31 days. Our day-to-day hormonal change has us really not living the same Groundhog's Day that guys experience every single day. So knowing that, we hold on to things longer. We hold on to concerns and stress and everything else over a longer period of time, because we're trying to cram it into a 24-hour cycle that doesn't serve us. So I didn't realize as a female entrepreneur how much I needed to better understand my cycle as a woman. And, I never thought of it beyond just a birth control pill or an inconvenience or not getting pregnant, which is what we've been kind of, shamed, blamed, and taught around being a woman, is that our only job is to reproduce and create more humanity, which we've done an incredible job of, by the way. We are the creators, and we are the creatives. We are the muses of the world. We are the ones that impact change. I always thought it was interesting. They said behind every great man is a great woman. And I believe that, because I think a lot of the times the guys would go to their wives and to their women and ask for it. And because we have a more holistic, open approach to business life and how it impacts people, we were able to give them insight that otherwise they would not experience on their own. But now, as we step into the world of business as women entrepreneurs, we don't feel like we're confident enough to take that experience, that worldly knowledge, and bring it to the table. And we're still waiting to ask permission. And it seems crazy in the world that's advancing so fast technologically that we are still struggling as women to step into our greatness. We've done amazing jobs in stepping into certain fields, and we continue to do this. And yet I feel like we're still stuck in that cycle of not understanding how our bodies experience the world around us. And to get into that, how does that fit into the world of business? And this is what we've had a lot of fun uncovering, to be honest. We've actually looked at, okay, what does a business plan look like for women? So I worked with and studied all these amazing business plans for scaling from nothing to six figures to seven to eight, right? Because there's evolutions along the way for that. And so I started talking with my business mentors. I talked to all the guys that I was working with, and I said, okay, and I got a group of women together, and I said, let's start redesigning this for how women approach business. How do we need to explore this? Where do we need to bring the creativity back into our business so that we can help redesign and reestablish our presence and showcase our strengths as women in business? And it has been fascinating to do this. And so when we put together the academy, which I'll give you guys all a sneak peek and backstage access to here on Monday, it has been an extraordinary journey. I did not realize as a female business owner what I was missing, and I had so many hangups around this, was finding female mentors. And it wasn't just mentors in the business world that I was in. Like, for a long time, I studied marketing only as a network marketer. But when I started studying marketing from different industries, like I was studying it from a real estate industry, I was studying it from the medical industry, I was studying it from different entities of women that I worked with, florists. I was studying it with those that were building out organizational businesses, that were doing housekeeping, that were doing packaging, that were doing transportation. I was like, wow, this has so many more approaches to it. And then what I realized is that the more women I talked to in different industries, I realized they held a key that I didn't know I needed. And they started unlocking puzzle pieces for me. I remember really early on when I was getting started, and I think so many of us as women experience this. And let me know if you do. I felt like you were given a puzzle. And every time I got a piece of marketing, I felt like I had a puzzle piece, but I didn't know how it connected to the other pieces. And then I would go and grab another training, and I'd get another piece to the puzzle, and I'd be like, oh my God, when is this all gonna show up as a big picture? When is this all gonna come together and actually make freaking sense for how I'm running my business? And I felt like everybody was handing me a piece of the puzzle, and I was like, that was my frustration as a business owner. And when I talk with women, that was one of their biggest frustrations, and still is that they feel like they've been given so many puzzle pieces, but they're not shown how they fit together, because women need to actually see the picture, and then as they build their business, they'll customize it. They'll change out the pieces. They'll flip things out. They'll test different things. And so it became really interesting as we went into this, that when we started looking at how do we teach women business, is that we had to go back to the structure of a business plan. But not just the traditional business plan. We had to take it and make it for women. So we had to dive back into what drives females, right? And really get centered on that conversation. And that was like, oh, this is interesting. And we added more interactive elements to designing your business. Modifying is my superpower. But we actually had to add more creativity elements. We had to add more tangible, more tactile, more elements of creativity to unlock women. And when we did that, women were finding it easier to define their brand. They were defining their colors. They were defining who they were. They were able to better craft their stories. They were able to understand who they wanted to bring into their business. Like, everything started to change for them. And that for me really justified and gave proof that what we were building inside this academy was really the next evolution of business education for the female entrepreneur that wants to know, what's the secret to building a business while taking care of my family? What's the secret to balancing my energy so I don't burn out? Because I'm finding women that they just expect burnout. They're like, oh yeah, I burned out. Yep, I did it again. And I went through it. I'm like, I am tired of burning out. So what can I do to prevent that high level of burnout that so many of us are experiencing? And that's That's been the interesting thing is like I didn't know what I didn't know about being a woman in business because I never looked down. I stayed up in here. I let all the guys tell me how to be analytical and project based and everything else, but I stopped listening to my body. And once I tapped back into that natural rhythm as we're building Truth Bomb, it's easier to have the conversation with women. It's like, okay, we're going to take time to rest. Okay, we're not going to be on this week because we just need that time to breathe. And getting everybody on board, whether they were in that element of their business or not, but creating the space and being the role model for women on what does business look like for us and how should it feel for us, and does what we've been given and gifted by the men really serve us, or does it need to be modified and changed so that we stay in our power, we stay in our energy, and we don't have all the health and medical and stress issues that so many of us are experiencing because we don't know how to shut off or shut down or rest. And I think this is the shift that's happening, and I'm excited with what we're doing. And my journey was one that was unique to me, but I know I've impacted and talked to so many women entrepreneurs. And moving forward, I really want to be in a conversation that's more authentic about being a woman and what that looks like as we run businesses and we raise families and we make the money and how it impacts our community. And there's just a bigger picture at play. And when we look at how we do businesses, I think it's time we start looking at the bigger picture, not just the little tactical things that we see so much being taught to us online. And I know I've been on here for a little bit now, and I do acknowledge everybody that's been on, Kathy, Heidi, Hillary, and everybody that's been back here in supporting this, and also to my entire team inside of Truth Bomb that has been monumental in bringing forth this new concept, this new idea, this new way of training women to create sustainability and livelihood in their lives. And I'm going to share some incredible stories. You're going to meet some incredible members that, trusted me to deliver on a new way to do business. One that I truly believe that in the years to come will become the predominant way women approach business. And it's going to take all of us. It's going to take everyone in different industries as women to come into this community, to come into this training, take out of it what you need for your business, and then watch you thrive and grow in a way that you've never experienced before. I know for me personally, I'm excited and loving what I do now more so than ever. And I just, yeah, Kathy, it's for me, it's time that women had a business model to role model after. And when I hear the phrase, find somebody that does what you do and has something you want, do what they do, and you'll get what you got. I want to just not only for myself be that mentor, but I want to create other women that continue to take this message and this way of doing business back into their business to help train and educate the next generation of women that are coming in here, because it is going to take all of us being in this conversation and supporting each other and saying, hey, this is what it means to be a woman, and it's okay to rest, and it's okay to reset. And you have to touch back into what it is you hormonally experience, because that's your superpower. Your empathy, your ability to connect, your ability to do that, those are powerful business tools that have been so long laid to rest and said, well, you can't do that way in business. Ladies, we're in these power play roles in corporate, in our businesses, in what we're doing. And to move forward, we need a new way of building our businesses. And I invite you at some point to continue following me the next 5 days. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk about the 4 phases of the female business monthly cycle and break down activities and things that we can be doing as we follow the cycle, whether you are in your menstrual cycle, your perimenopausal, postmenopausal. And I'll even share a really incredible story that from one of my team members about her daughter that's not even having her period yet, but what she's starting to see because we're in this conversation. This is why I say energetically, we already hold this energy in our bodies as women, that we do cycle through that 28 days. And the more that we understand that cycle, the more that we lean into it as our superpower and how we manage our time, our business, our family, and our finances. We're going to start seeing more and more women hit that millionaire status. We're going to see more and more women sustain their level of success in business, whether it's careers, whether it's in the businesses they're building, and we're just doing something completely different. And that's the fun part. And we're incorporating a lot of laughter and a lot of what it means to be women. So let's tap back into that genius and create more play and fun in what we're doing, so that we can really be the example for future women of what it means to have a business role model business academy, right? And it's going to take, I know at some point, my goal with this entire academy, you'll hear me talk about it, is to have women from all businesses go through, experience this new evolution of business training, and then become experts in the given areas that we're going to need women to start showing up in, to teach this new approach within these expertise around marketing, around finances, around business, all of that. And it's going to take all of us really to step into this, embrace this conversation, show up as leaders in these specialized areas, but still be part of that holistic conversation. So, yeah, what I didn't know about being a female. And I'm learning it now, and I want to share it because I really feel like I'm just the start of this conversation, and as we continue this conversation, it's going to get better and better. There's going to be more women teaching and leading from the stages and writing books around what we know innately as women in building businesses, and having our superpowers really become the forefront alongside of what the men have already been building for businesses, to create more yin, more yang, more balance, and really have us thriving as women. We are the creatives. We are the creatives, and it's time to tap back into that creative energy and refresh our minds, our bodies, and our souls as we move forward in being entrepreneurs and changing the world. So thank you all for joining me. This has been a lot of fun. For those that are catching the replay, definitely click on replay or hashtag replay. Let me know you're here. Comment if anything ever hit home for you. And for those again that were watching and you're finding value out of this, stick around for tomorrow. We're going to meet again here at 12 noon. We're going to talk about the 4 phases of the female business monthly cycle. And why that is so significant in what we're doing moving forward. So I'm excited. I'll see you then. With that, hope you guys are having a great day, and we'll talk soon. Bye, everyone.